afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Moken. This is the Unlicensed Counselor Podcast. So grateful, as always, to be here. Another beautiful day in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm really going to stop saying that. We don't need any more folks out here. It's really hot. Don't come here. Honestly, it's just happy to live in the city that I live in, man. You know, and honestly, this studio here and Star Worldwide is just awesome too. It's right next to Fashion Square Mall. If anybody's interested, highly recommend checking them out. Dave Pratt and his team do an awesome job of making this podcaster look as good and sound as good as he possibly can. So, you know, today want to dive into a topic that hits a little close to home for me, you know, as many of these do, but really was putting a lot of thought into this topic. And, you know, the topic is really anxiety, but I want to talk about it from the perspective of I see a lot of people kind of cope, treat, mitigate their anxiety through the use of busyness, right? So this is something I had in a previous relationship where we tried to discuss it, and honestly, just it was one of these things that we just were never able to kind of make enough progress on. And it's just this treating of anxiety through the unrelenting need to stay busy. And I think it's really an interesting topic. And I want to go through an example. I want to define what anxiety is first, talk about some of the examples of what kind of, you know, using busyness to treat anxiety looks like. And then also really some strategies to avoid using busyness as a way to kind of treat your anxiety as well, too. So anxiety is a big topic. And I mean, look, more people in this country are kind of, I want to say, you know, inflicted with or have symptoms of. I mean, anxiety is right up there. Anxiety and depression, you hear those things grouped together very often. They don't always necessarily have to go together, but anxiety really is a very, very common and prevalent thing. And it's all degrees, right? I understand that. But I want to dig into that and talk a little bit about that. And again, as always, you know, go to our social and drop some comments. If you agree, disagree, don't like what you hear, or maybe you have better examples than the ones that I'm going to share with today. Really like to hear it. Again, we've had some incredible responses. I think I mentioned the other day on one of my reels on Instagram, we had a post go over 1.1 million views, which is pretty wild as well, too. So big thanks for all the support and kind of sharing and liking and all that good stuff that you do as well. But before we dig into that, I want to thank our sponsors, as always, our friends at ShareTech. Again, this is the most accurate and comprehensive drug test available on the market. This is not a pee in a cup drug test. Look at the little strip and kind of see, am I pregnant, not pregnant, kind of do those lines change kind of thing. That technology is dated and old. At ShareTech, we ship you a test right to your front door. You provide a sample into that cup. That cup gets then sent overnight back to our lab, where this is an LCMS machine, a massive machine. I've toured this laboratory myself, where they actually identify over 100 plus samples of drugs and alcohol. You get a report sent back to you in a secure link that identifies not only the substances that are found, but the levels of those substances as well, too. So no more of, oh, I got this from eating an everything bagel, or, you know, a secondhand smoke from, you know, the concert that I was at last night. You're going to know the levels of whatever substance is in that individual system as well, which is a really important point when identifying kind of maybe the level of care that individual needs. So if you're in the need or in the market for a drug or alcohol screen, there really is only one choice, that is ShareTech. So go to betterdrugtest.com, pick up one of these tests. Trust me, you're not going to want to go back to using any of these other cheapy tests from Amazon anytime in the near future. And a big thanks to them, as always, for continuing to be a sponsor of our show. Next up, our friends at EasySheets.club, the best, most fun, relaxing subscription service that you're going to have. This is one that you're going to use every single day, and you're going to probably use it more than anything else because you sleep on it, right? You spend 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep at night. Get a subscription service that allows you to change your sheets as frequently as you want, rotate a variety of types of sheets. Maybe you want some flannel sheets in the wintertime and a nice light temperature-controlled sheet in the summertime out here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Highly recommend it. As I always say, I love the Carrie Loha white bamboo. Boom. Not only are you going to love it, but whoever's sleeping next to you or your dog or whoever is going to love it as well, too. Starts at $50 a month. Honestly, it's such a fun little subscription service. Professionally cleaned, pressed, sent right to your front door. Take the old ones off, put them in a prepaid bag, drop them in any UPS store, and they're going to ship back to us. That's it. Go to easysheets.club. Trust me, you're going to thank me later. Last but not least, the Unlicensed Counselor. Go to theunlicensedcounselor.com. You've heard me. You hear how I address things. I hit problems head on. There is just this solution-focused nature of counseling that I bring to the table that I think has gotten lost in the counseling world. I don't know why. It's turned into just talk therapy, and I like to offer a little bit more direct answers to your questions and also strategic planning and see if we can get to solutions rather than just talking about your problems. And honestly, I don't know where counseling made a left turn there, but I've seen it all too many times where people are going for months and months and months and years, and they're just kind of still talking in circles about the same thing. So if you'd like to try a different approach, go to theunlicensedcounselor.com, book some time one-on-one with myself, and we'll dig into whatever we need to talk about that's going on in your life. So, okay, back to busyness and anxiety, right? Let's start with what is kind of a general definition of anxiety. Anxiety is really the excessive apprehension about real or even perceived threats that typically lead to avoidance behaviors and even physical symptoms like increased heart rate and muscle tension, right? So I think the important point there is that they could be real things that you have anxiety over, but people also spin up their anxiety levels about things that may or may not even happen as well, too. So that's something to keep in mind as you're going through and listening to some of the examples. But today I really want to dig into, I see so many people who kind of want, need, feel, are driven to just stay busy or not present in order to not have to deal or mitigate the level of anxiety that's kind of going on in your life. Now, I will say this too. This is, if you're using drugs or alcohol to kind of help alleviate, reduce, or think that you're alleviating or reducing the symptoms of anxiety that come along for this, let me just tell you it's the exact opposite, right? And I'll speak to marijuana, for example. People say, I hit a little smoke, hit a little joint here and just kind of loosen up, relax. It's proven time and time and again to increase anxiety. So that temporary relief only gives way to an increase in anxiety over time. And now with the levels and the strains and the potency of marijuana and how it has continued to change and evolve to what is like super jet fuel marijuana now, is really seeing a lot more anxiety tied to THC as well, too. And the same really goes with alcohol as well, too. That temporary relief that you may get from a glass of wine. And look, if it's a glass of wine, then so be it. But if it's a couple glasses of wine and a bottle, and now I'm cooking over dinner, and I'm using that as a way to take the edge off, or, that kind of mommy juice or whatever it is, right? We see a lot of this kind of wine time language, especially around kind of female culture these days, not exclusively, but that is a thing. I see it in all the kind of, parent groups around and events that I go to. It's a very common thing. But if you're using that as a crutch to kind of help treat what maybe is either undiagnosed anxiety or even diagnosed, and maybe you're even on medication as well too, that's something that we need to consider that I'm really not going to take into account as we're talking about today. But if that is something that's going on, I would encourage you to reach out for professional help as well too. And that could be from a physician or from an LPC, LAC, PhD psychologist. Just find somebody, or a psychiatrist as well too, that you can be talking about exactly those feelings. It could be that shortness of breath that you're getting, or that feeling of impending doom. It could be how you're always kind of ready and kind of short of breath and kind of trying to jump into that conversation. Those are all signs and symptoms that kind of go along with anxiety as well too. And it's something that I actually, even in the counselor that I go to, the therapist that I go to, who's a psychologist, he's like, Steve, I think you have a touch of anxiety, going on in yourself as well too. And honestly, it didn't shake me, but I was like, I don't view myself as an anxious person at all. But when he cited an example of kind of how I'm always kind of at the top of my throat, like ready to kind of interject with a comment or something, I'm like, yeah, that is a behavior that I regularly kind of do, where I'm always not jumping at the chance to say something. But I'm like, okay, it's something I can explore and kind of take mental note of in my own life, right? In my own life. Because again, as I said, one of the reasons of this topic in particular was coming out of a marriage in which the other person did have some anxiety issues going on, if we want to call them issues. I'll I think it's an accurate description. Doubt she's listening to this, but you know what? So be it. It's out there now. But it's the busyness around that and the failure to recognize how this person was choosing to build. And I'm not just going to, this whole episode is not just around that person, but just how people can choose to build a life that kind of help facilitate and kind of mitigate some of the anxiety. So, okay, enough of all that fun stuff. Let's dig into some examples. And look, you probably hear some of these and go, yeah, no duh, Steve. That definitely sounds like somebody who's anxious and trying to kind of create this different way of dealing with anxiety in their life. But it's really a way for them to distract from their underlying feelings, right? Maybe avoid or distract, by doing this. And then either the husband, the wife, the kids, whomever it is oftentimes feeling at a loss, or they're not connected to that person because it's just one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And it's really kind of that person out on their own island, and some of those other folks going, hey, how am I able to connect and feel like a unit here? So number one, overloading schedules, right? Obviously, I think this is the number one thing. Some individuals just pack their schedules, right? We got tasks. We got taking the kids to school. We got practice. We got commitments to keep yourself occupied. By staying busy, they avoid facing the facts and the anxious thoughts and emotions. So if I'm constantly going from in the morning when I wake up to breakfast, to lunches, to school, to work, to calls in between, to taking calls in the car, to running the kids over to here, to picking up the gifts, to making whatever it is, like it's da-dun, 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 da-dun. That is just a way to avoid kind of having to deal with thoughts and feelings, right? If you're just constantly in motion with these things, like that is a way that people use busyness as a way to kind of treat and mitigate anxiety. And that's really number two, is that constant movement, right? So engaging in constant activity and being on the go provide that escape from anxiety. By filling every single moment with tasks and errands, individuals may prevent themselves from having that idle time and having those anxious thoughts kind of come up. And I was listening to another podcast kind of on this topic as well too, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was around the lines of like, I don't think I wrote it down on my notes here, but if being calm makes you feel uneasy, right? So if you actually get to a calm place and you're feeling kind of uneasy, then that's really a sign that anxiety is kind of sitting there in your life as well too. If you're not able to kind of be in a calm place and don't feel that need to kind of fill it with something, right? To fill it with something. Being able to sit in it and take a breath and kind of stay in that moment. That's something that people who don't have anxiety are able to kind of do. And if you get to a point and somebody's like, okay, I gotta fill it with something. I gotta get on my phone. I gotta do something like that. That constant movement is really what I'm talking about here. And it's something that should be noticed by you or your loved one. And again, a lot of this stuff, I mean, this anxiety is common and heavy hitting stuff. It may need to be treated by a professional depending on kind of the severity and the level of where it's at. But another example of this is the avoidance of introspection, right? Busyness can serve as a way to avoid introspection and self-reflection. By keeping busy, people can divert their attention away from the deeper emotional issues or worry that may be causing their anxiety, right? That's a really interesting point that I hope it kind of resonates with folks that are out there. Not only are you doing all these other things to just kind of stay busy, but avoiding the time to kind of take a step back, look at what's going on in your life and wonder, why do I need to operate like this? Having a moment to kind of go, all right, am I being too busy? Am I just filling time here? If they're able to divert themselves away from looking at kind of maybe the deeper emotional stuff that maybe is going untreated, which is why I do think, when you're talking about anxiety related things, that maybe bringing in a counselor is probably a good way to go, because some of this could stem from childhood. It could stem from sexual issues. It could stem from, there's a lot of things that people don't treat that now allows them to kind of carry these things around them, and they don't even connect it to. I'm doing like the connect the dots fingertips here, which always makes for great pod. But they may not even know the underlying reason that they operate their life in such a manner is it to avoid the thoughts that can come rushing in during those stillness times, during those quiet times. And the best way that they know how to do it is by staying busy. And often number two is drugs or alcohol. And number three is all of the above, right? And many people go to that as well too. So the avoidance of introspection, not having to take the time to kind of deal with that stuff that's hard, that people you know truly want to kind of push down and not have to deal with, right? Next up on the list is seeking external validation. So some individuals really derive a sense of self-worth and validation from being busy, right? By constantly appearing occupied and appearing productive to others, they seek validation and affirmation, which can temporarily alleviate their anxiety, right? I know we all know this person where it's like, oh, yeah, well, you did that. Well, I did. I went to the gym and the kid's birthday party, and then I drove them across town, and then I got over to work, and you get that little laundry list of like achievements or things, right, that they're like trying to prop themselves up as Superman or Superwoman because of all of the tasks or chores or things that they're doing to take on in their life, and they kind of wear that as a badge of courage, right? And I think oftentimes our society rewards kind of that of like, wow, look how tough or strong or together that person is, when really it's somebody who's probably, you know, hurting inside and just kind of putting all these layers of things on top to make it look like they have everything together, when really underneath there's probably some pain or some other type of outstanding issue that's going untreated that's leading this person to kind of structure their life in a way, right? Okay, let me go up to my next page of notes here as well too. Moving on to some examples. Multiple deadlines, right? This could be work related. So you got a ton of different deadlines. You got to plan the kids' party. You've got the work. You've got multiple calls. You got to plan the trip. You got to do things. I mean, there is just a whole litany of things that if people are just packing their schedules and appointments, that busyness is just keeping them from having to deal with that anxiety, right? So just understanding and really controlling your calendar would be a good way to start to reduce this. But if you're just going back to back to back to back to back, I mean, look, you're going to burn out. I mean, nobody can just operate that way. And again, I know a lot of people wear that as I had 8 Zoom meetings today. And it's like, okay, did you get to the bathroom? Did you take a break? Did you get some lunch? I mean, do you get outside, take a few minutes, stretch your legs, do whatever you need to do? But again, we often reward that type of thing. You know, next up would be, you know, how can we find a way to balance the personal and professional responsibilities, right? You know, if one kind of becomes unbalanced over the other, I don't think that's a good thing as well, too. I know some single moms, and God bless them, it is really hard, but it is all that they do and talk and post. And, you know, it's like, don't we need to have a little bit of balance kind of outside of just the kids as well too? And I don't mean to pick on single moms. That's not my intent there. I mean, I'm a single dad. I get it. But it's just like, if that is your whole thing, maybe we need to balance it out, because that's a little bit too much on one side. And the same thing to go with professionals as well too. I worked 16 hours today. Okay. Well, did you get to, you know, give your kids a hug before they go to bed, or say prayers with them, or have dinner, or throw the ball in the yard, or go to their practice, or whatever it is? So if you're just packing yourself to the point of these professional or personal extremes, you know, where's the social going to get into this? Where's the family time going to get in? So if you're just kind of doing this as a way to avoid, or again, not have to deal with some of this underlying stuff that may be going on, which is why you're structuring your life that way, may be worth looking into and considering, right? The same goes with kind of planning and organizing major events. You know, if you got conferences, you got weddings, you got holiday parties, you got nonprofits. You know, if you're continually find yourself signing up for more and more of these things, and I know a lot of people in the PTA and you know, it's just, there's a lot of that stuff. And if you're always jumping on and volunteering, I mean, it's good. I think being involved is great. But again, what are your motivations behind all these things? Is it for the recognition? Is it because you're really good at it? Or is it because I just don't want to kind of dig into maybe some of the stuff that I need to be digging into as well? And me just staying busy tells everybody out there in the world that sees me and goes, wow, he or she is really on it, that they really kind of think that I have it together. I think this next point, and I'm surprised that I even put it this far down on my list, because this was a big, large issue in my last marriage, was the being connected to technology, right? So feeling the need to respond to emails immediately, messages, text, group text, this became a thing to where, and I made the request nicely on many occasions of, can we just put the phones down? Can we just, when we're, if we're trying to figure out where we want to go to eat, do we have to pick up the phone right away? Everything involved picking up the phone right away. Every single thing involved picking up the phone. And again, it was a way to treat anxiety, right? I'm looking at something, I'm distracted, I don't have to think. Oh, but I got this message, I got that message, I got this message, I got this group chat. Oh, the kids, and this. Like, I get it. It doesn't mean just because other people are doing it that you have to do that. And I used to get that message kind of sent back to me, very often. Well, this is what everybody else does. And that's a big red flag for me. I'm just not a this is what everybody else does kind of guy in general. In fact, if it is what everybody else is doing, my gut response is to go the other way, just because I am not of the belief that what everybody else does is usually the right course of action. It involves groupthink. It involves stopping and pausing and going, well, why are they doing that, versus just going along with it. So I found that to be a major issue in our relationship, is just with cell phones. And I'm not even talking about other screens. It's a cell phone is what I'm specifically talking about. It's the instant relief, the dopamine hit by looking at this, and now I don't have to think, right? And now I can stare at this, I can push some buttons, I can get those responses out, and I don't have to stay present. The anxiety doesn't let you stay present. So if you're able to find a way to be able to put those things down and be present with your loved ones, I think you're going to make a lot of progress with the folks, right? So that is just a really, really big one. And that's a tough one for folks to do, right? We've got a lot of professionals out there that listen to this, and I know you got deadlines and responses and texts and employees and hiring and firing and deadlines and budgets, and I get it. But, finding some time away from that is super key. Especially if you already are kind of predisposed to some of the anxiety, busyness stuff that we're talking about here today. And last up on just the examples list of the financial pressures, right, of managing bills and debt and uncertain financial circumstances, that can generate a lot of stress and anxiety around the future as well, too, right? So if you're constantly wrapped up in that type of worry and things like that, that adds another layer of stress and anxiety, where, again, you don't have to address it if I just keep doing stuff. If I just keep busy, if I just keep focusing on this, or I volunteer for another thing, or I just, sink more time into the kids. I get it. I get all of it. I really do. And this is so much easier said than done. But I think the first step in all of this is just recognizing when and if you do maybe have a little anxiety, right? Not everybody wants to admit it. It's, does it feel like shame or something? It's not. Most of us have that in some way, shape, or form. Again, in varying degrees, severities, and levels of it, but it's okay. Understanding that anxiety is normal. And now, how can we have some strategies to kind of deal with that, right? Well, how about that? That's next up on my talking point, right, Robin? So strategies on dealing with some of this. All right, we talked. People are busy. They use all those things that we just talked about to kind of avoid having to kind of deal with things. So first up, self-reflection and mindfulness. I know mindfulness makes it into a lot of our podcast discussions. This is the Unlicensed Counselor, so we talk behavioral health, mental health. Mindfulness is a big part of this. So take some time to reflect on your feelings and thoughts. Practice mindfulness techniques like deep breathing, meditation, journaling to become more aware of your anxiety and its underlying causes. This can help you address the root causes rather than relying solely on just the busyness, the picking up the phone thing, the scheduling yourself for another activity, to volunteering for another thing so you just keep going, which again also leads to picking up the bottle or, potentially drugs and things like that as well too. Use Calm, use Headspace, use yoga, use nature. I don't care how you find that or how you choose to self-reflect or practice. Watch the sunrise, put the phone away. I don't know what it is, but find a way to incorporate some self-reflection and mindfulness. And let's think about why. So again, first accepting that you might have a little dusting of anxiety, not a problem, not a big thing, right? And now let's think about why it may be. Maybe it's a little surface level thing. You just got some stress in the marriage and we haven't talked about it. You're not having sex or whatever it is. Like maybe it's that, or maybe it's a significant trauma that stemmed from past stuff, right? Whatever it is, it's time to kind of start putting some real thought into it so we can start to move forward and get past that, right? Number 2, prioritize and set boundaries. Learn to prioritize tasks and responsibilities. So identify what is truly important and focus your energy on those aspects, right? So let's set some boundaries and say no when necessary so you can help prevent overloading your schedule and create space for self-care and relaxation, right? It's kind of managing around some of this anxiety while we're kind of hopefully digging into the root causes of it a little bit more. And look, folks, by the way, medication can assist in this as well, too. I am not the unlicensed doctor. I'm not giving medical advice, but talk to your psychiatrist. Those are the folks who actually do the medical prescribing. Talk to your MD. I prefer psychiatrist a little bit more, but I also do have some issues with Xanax and getting the world over there. So there's a fine line, but SSRIs and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff if you clinically have those, you kind of meet the definition for what that is, that can help assist in some of this, right? So again, not a bad thing as well. I think you'd be amazed at, how many people are on this. Again, I worked in a treatment center and every single person that came in the door, I feel like had some anxiety. Now, I think some of those folks were abusing, certain medications, but that's a whole different story. Number 3 on the list, embrace downtime, right? This is back to where if downtime makes you uncomfortable, if it makes you uneasy, and if you find yourself with some downtime and feel the need to stick something in there, make a call, make a text, schedule something, that may be an indicator that you got a little anxiousness going on. So embrace that downtime versus trying to feel the need to fill it with something. Allow yourselves to have regular periods of rest and relaxation. Schedule some downtime in your calendar and engage in activities that bring you joy, such as hobbies, spending time with loved ones, your kids, nature. This can help reduce anxiety and create some balance in your life. I know I've said this before, but the more I read about getting outside and how it can help reduce anxiety and other conditions from depression and things like that, get outside, take a walk take a walk through your neighborhood, find something that kind of brings you joy. And again, joy is still on that parking lot list of topics we're going to do, and embrace that. Don't feel like you got to shove something in your calendar. Be like, wow, I scheduled 30 minutes for myself today. This is awesome. Do a guided meditation on Headspace or Calm or something like that. Go find a yoga class. Whatever it is, embrace it. Number 4, challenge perfectionism. Recognize that it's okay to delegate tasks or ask for help when needed. Avoid the pressure of constantly striving for perfection in everything that you do. Set realistic expectations for yourself and accept that it's natural to have limitations. There's an AA-ism that I think I have a sticker actually on the front of my big book, is progress, not perfection, right? Progress, not perfection. And I'm a big believer in that. Perfection is hard and it can wear you out, not just you and your loved ones and others and people around you. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have other people, get some things done for you to help with you as well too. Not feeling like you have to be Superman or Superwoman to get everything done, right? Like that doesn't have to be the world that you operate. And again, if you think that way, start questioning why you may think that way and what would happen. What would be the worst case solution or situation if you didn't do that and somebody else did it? Maybe they didn't get the job done exactly the way you like it. What's the worst thing in the world that can happen then, right? Start challenging some of those thoughts as they come up as you're working your way through this and thinking around some of your anxiety as well. And number 5, seek support, right? Anxiety is one of these topics that, again, medication could be appropriate, exercise could be appropriate. I'm not exactly the one just sitting here on a podcast that can tell you which one of those it's going to be. Reach out to your supportive friends, family members, if needed, professionals. it's challenging to address your own anxiety, right? So having somebody kind of guide you through and help extract some of this information and maybe challenge some of your thoughts and challenge some of the behaviors that you've probably been doing for years and decades is a good way to start to dig into this, right? So talking to someone who can offer some guidance and some understanding can be immensely helpful. Now, let me just say this as we kind of put a note in kind of the busyness and anxiety conversation. Managing anxiety is an ongoing process, and it is very important to be patient with yourself. Find some healthy ways to cope with this, and your anxiety will decrease and your overall well-being will increase. Look, it's interesting, it's tough, it's challenging. If you're with somebody who's maybe struggling or maybe doesn't know that they are struggling with anxiety, be patient with them. Maybe there's ways that you can encourage them to talk to somebody. I know those are really tough and hard conversations, having been in relationship with people who really struggle with that as well too. So I'm sensitive to that, but encouraging them to maybe seek some professional help and start to explore why maybe some of these behaviors are really kind of covering some underneath anxiety that could be sitting there for, again, decades or even years. So hope everybody got a little bit of interesting nuggets and food for thought out of that. Again, big topic, lots to unpack there. Don't feel like you're going to solve anxiety in a day or two, even just listening to this podcast. But if somebody may be struggling with this, or maybe you've seen some habits that we've touched on today, I encourage you to share, maybe send this podcast directly to an individual. You can hit those 3 little dots there and send this episode directly to somebody, and maybe that'll help spark a conversation. You can say, hey, let's maybe listen to this, grab a cup of coffee, and we can talk about this. So hopefully everybody got a little bit of good stuff out of this. Again, my name is Steve Moak. This is The Unlicensed Counselor, and thank you so much for your time.